Hi and welcome back. In our last video we went ahead and finished creating the templates or the template in the individual pages for our sample site here. And in this video what I want to go ahead and do is set up this fading banner here. And we're actually going to go ahead and create a second template that we can use for our site. So I'm going to go ahead, minimize this, and here I am back inside of Expression Web. Now we have this main DWT, the original template, the main template for our site, and we're going to use that as the basis for our second template with our sliding banner. So I'm going to go ahead and double click on that to open this up, and I'm simply going to go to File, Save As, and I'm going to go ahead and name this one Slider. And even though that's a fading banner, the tool that's used to create the effect is called a slider. We'll talk more about that later. And then I'm going to go ahead and make sure I select Dynamic Web Template from Save As Type. So it says slider.dwt, Dynamic Web Template right down here. And then I'm going to go ahead and select Save. So now I have a second template that I can customize, so I can have two different templates to base pages off of in my site. Now we need to go get the tools that we're going to need to create that fading effect. Now the technology that we use to do that is a language called JavaScript. And fortunately there's a lot of pre-existing JavaScript tools out there that will help somebody who is completely unfamiliar with JavaScript actually create some pretty great effects like this. So while this may look very difficult, you're going to see that it's actually pretty easy. And again, the name of the effect, or the name of the tool that we're actually using here, is called a slider. And it's called a slider because many of these tools can have sliding effects where the one image slides out, the next one slides in, or it can fade in and out, or they can rotate in some way. So just generically, this type of tool is called a slider. And again, it uses JavaScript or jQuery to achieve that effect. Now, there are lots of different tools out there that will create this fading banner effect, this sliding banner effect. Some of them have lots and lots of options, and some of them are more simple, more basic. Mine is more simple. It's more of a basic one. You can see the effect that it does here. It does have a few options inside of it, but generally speaking, I'm using one that's very simple, because the simpler it is, or the more basic it is, the simpler it's going to be to set up. And you don't want something overly complicated at this point, because your experience with JavaScript is probably fairly minimal. Now, the tool that we're going to use is part of my framework. So if you've downloaded my framework, you have access to this slider tool. If not, you can simply go to Google and search for jQuery slider, and you will find a whole variety of different sliders out there that you can include in your template, maybe some that you like more than the one that I have here. And they will obviously come with their own instructions. So again, there's one in my framework that you can download from my site, or you can go to Google and search for jQuery, that's jQuery slider, and you'll find lots of these tools are available for you to use. So the first thing we want to do is go grab that tool from my framework. So I'm going to go ahead and minimize Expression Web, and here's my framework folder. I'm going to go ahead and open that on up and go into the main framework folder. And this time I'm going to go into this folder here, JS, for short for JavaScript. And I want to go ahead and double click on that, and I'm going to go into the plugins folder. And you can see there's a variety of plugins that do different things here. We want the banner slider plugin. So I'm going to go ahead and right click on that and copy it. And then I'm going to go ahead and come back out here and go into my local site folder. And I need to go ahead and right click and paste, or just copy and paste that in there. Now we need to go grab one more file. So I'm going to go ahead and close that and go back into my framework folder. And I'm going to go into my framework right here, back into JavaScript, but instead of going to plugins, I need to go into libraries. And here is the jQuery library. And again, if you don't have this, you can simply Google jQuery.js or go to jQuery.com and you can download jQuery. I'm going to go ahead and copy that. And I'm going to go into my folder and again paste that in there. So now we're ready to go ahead and set the slider up. I'll come back in here to Expression Web. And when you look over here in your site list, in your folder list, you should see the banner slider folder and the jQuery jQuery file. If not, simply go to the View menu and select Refresh. And now I can see banner slider as well as jQuery.js. Now we created a JS folder here, and so far it's empty. We need to move this file, jQuery.js, into that folder. So I'm going to go ahead and drag that right up into there. So jQuery.js goes into the JS folder. Now I'm going to go ahead and open up this banner slider folder. And there's two folders inside of there, CSS and JS. I'm going to open the JS folder up by clicking that icon. And I need to drag slider.js into my JS folder. Then I'm going to open up CSS. And I need to drag slider.css into my CSS folder. So again, slider.css should go in the CSS folder. Both jQuery and slider.js should go in your JS folder. Now there's one other file here. It says slider page code text. And we're going to go ahead and open that on up, and that's going to have the instructions, just the simple 4-step instructions for setting up this tool. Now, first thing you're going to see here, step 1, it says to copy this code into your template. And specifically, these items go into the head section. There is going to be a link to the jQuery library, and there's going to be a link to the jQuery Slider plugin. Now, let's go ahead and look at slider.dwt, and I'm going to go to the code section here and scroll up to the head section. And you can see right now the head section really doesn't contain anything at all. So we need to go ahead and we need to add those 2 lines of code. I'm going to go ahead and go into Slider page code, highlight both of these lines, and copy them. Then I'm going to come into slider.dwt, and I'm going to go ahead and paste those lines into the head section. Not into the editable region, but right into the head section, right here. Now, you'll be familiar with the source attribute here, because we use that for the image tag. And remember, when we used it with the image tag, source just basically points to another file on our computer. In this case, we need a link to the jQuery library and to the jQuery Slider plugin. And both of these are in our JS folder. There's the jQuery library, there's the jQuery Slider plugin. So what I need to do is I need to highlight this area right here, type a quotation mark, and then select Pick URL. We're in the CSS folder, so I need to go up one level and then go into the JavaScript or the JS folder. Select my jQuery.js and then click OK. And again, if you don't have that file, you can go to www.jquery.com and download it. Then I'm going to go ahead and highlight this right here. And I'm going to type a quote and select Pick URL. And then I'm going to select the slider.js file right there. And again, I need to close my quotation marks. So that's all you need to do for step 1, is copy these lines of code in and make sure that they're pointing at the correct file in your JavaScript folder. Step 2 is very similar to step 1. I need to create a link to the slider CSS file. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight that and copy it. And then I'm going to go ahead and come in here, and below my slider script, I want to go ahead and paste that line in there. And again, href points to the location of that file. And this is actually where a little bit of confusion comes in. Source and href kind of do the same thing. They both point to a file outside of your HTML file that the HTML file needs to use. So they both do the same thing a little bit differently. So now I'm going to go ahead and highlight that right there, including the quotation marks. Type a quote and select Pick URL. I need to go up one level, then go into the CSS folder and select slider.css. And again, got to remember to close my quotation marks, just like that. Now I need to go ahead and come back into my instructions, and here is step 3. We want to copy this code here, and we want to paste it again into the head section of this document. And jQuery needs to come first, then slider.js, then your slider CSS, and then finally we're going to go ahead and paste that script in right there. So we'll go ahead and save that. Coming back to my instructions, here is step 4. And this is on actually setting up the images themselves. And so what I need to do is I need to highlight everything from this opening div right here all the way down to this closing div. So I need to highlight all of that text, and I need to copy it and come back into my template. Now, this sliding or fading banner is going to take the place of this static banner right here. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight my static banner and paste that text into its place. And I'm actually going to go ahead and highlight that again and hit Tab just to move all that over and keep everything nice and neat. Now, you have an option here. There's this item right here, as well as this item right here. If you are going to have a link inside of your slider, in other words, if you want to be able to click the image when it comes up and go to a page, you're going to go ahead and use this first item right here. The setup is exactly the same. The only difference is you actually have an A tag right here before the image. And remember, the A tag, that anchor tag, is for a link. So you could put the link right here in the href attribute. In our case, we aren't going to use a link. We just want that rotating banner. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that right there. I'm also going to go ahead and actually delete this comment right here as well. So you should have all this code here. Now, the individual images that you rotate through are basically going to be list items inside of this unordered list. You can see there's a UL, there's an LI. This is one of your images right here. Now right now it just has one image inside of it. We actually want more than one image, so I'm going to go ahead and copy that. Whoops. I'm going to go ahead and highlight that and copy it. And then I'm going to go ahead and paste it in. Whoops. I keep not getting that copied. There we go. And then I'm going to paste that in. And you'll see I pasted it once, twice, 3 times for a total of 4 list items or 4 images. And at the very bottom, before we close our UL, you should place this div right here. Now, coming in here, you can see there's the image for each one of these transitions. So what we need to do is we need to highlight the value for the source here because we want to use our images. Then type a quote and use pick URL. I'm going to go into the images folder. There's banner 1, the first image I want to use. So I'll go ahead and select that and close the quote. I'll go ahead and highlight this again. Quote, pick URL. And there's the second image I want to use. Close my quote. Then we'll highlight that right there. Do pick URL. Banner 3. And then finally this element right here. And banner 4. So that's all I need to do to specify each one of these elements or each one of these images in the sliding. So now let's go ahead and let's check this and see if it's actually working. Now I'm going to go ahead here and come out of Code View into Design View. And you should see here a big open blank space. And again, that's the way we want this to look. And in order to see this, we actually need to test this in a browser. Design View won't show it to us. The problem is that if I go ahead and try and preview this in a browser, all I'm going to get is the code here. And the reason for that is that this is a DWT file. It's not a web page. It's a template. So what we need to do is we need to apply this to a page and then test the page. We created that team page just a little bit ago. If I double click on it, here it is. Now it already has a template applied to it. You can see the editable regions here. And you can see the locked areas right here. If I want to go ahead and attach a new template to this page so that I have the sliding banner, all I've got to do is go to Format, Dynamic Web Template, and attach Dynamic Web Template. I'm in my main folder. I'm going to select slider.dwt and click Open. It should say one of one files was updated. And it now went ahead and added that slider template to our page. So it no longer should have a static banner in this location. It should now have that fading banner. So let's go ahead and again preview this in a browser window. And you can see there is my slider. Now, one feature that this slider comes with is this drop down box right here that has an image title and then some text right here. You can either choose to use this or not. It's very easy to turn off. And it's actually very easy to turn back on if you decide you want to use it later. I'm going to go ahead and come back in here to my template. And I'm going to come into Code View. And I want you to notice below the image, you're going to see we've got this span line here. And you can see strong right here. This is an image title. And then a closing strong tag and a line break. Whatever you place in between these strong tags is going to be the title for that drop down. So again, there's the image title. The text is right here. And that's actually this area right here. You're going to notice these breaks here that basically indicate where the browser should put a line break in. And you'll see it's about every 5 or 6 words. And that's because the plugin won't automatically wrap that text around for you. You have to tell it where a line break is. But all of that text is basically this material right here. Now, formatting this is very simple, or turning this off is very simple. Let's go ahead and go into our CSS folder, and there's our styles.css as well as our slider.css. We want to open slider.css. And a few things that I want to point out to you here. One is the width and the height here, 900 and 300. This needs to be the exact width and height of the image you're using. So when you actually are creating this website for real, if your images are not 900 by 300, let's say they're 800 by 250, you need to change that value. You need to also make sure that the width here, we don't need the height, but the width is the same as up here, which is the same as your image. Which again, we're using 900 by 300 images, so this is already set up correctly for you. I'm going to keep scrolling down here. The width and the height here is the width and the height of your caption box. Now the height here is you can do a lot of special effects with this, but the height here is normally going to be just as tall as your image. And the width here is going to be however wide you want that to be. So that's all there is to that right there. Now, coming down here, you can say this is the color of the text in the caption, and you can see it's white. There's actually 3 F's there. If all of your characters or all of your pairs are the same, you can actually make it a 3-digit code, and that's what we're using here. So FF, FF, FF can become just 3 F's. 00, 00, 00, 00 could become 3 zeros. You can write it either way. I usually write them all the way out, but here I actually made that change. This is the color right here of the heading. So the color of your text and the color of your heading right there. This is the font size of your text and the font your text is in. And this is the font size of your heading. So again, you can make any of those changes you want. And just go in here and play around with the settings and you'll see how it works. Now, how do we very simply turn this off? We're not actually going to turn off the effect. We're actually just going to make it invisible. We're going to make it invisible. So right here is the filter line. It's above font family. We're going to go ahead and make the opacity 0 for each one of these values. And that will make that box invisible for you. And the reason why I prefer to show you show you how to do it this way rather than show you how to remove all the captioning and the box altogether is that, let's say 3 months from now you decide, you know what, I'd like that drop down. Well, at that point you just go in here and put the 0.7 back in for each one of these, with the exception of the first one here, which should be the value 70, and the box will reappear. So I'm going to go ahead and take that out again. So real easy to turn this off and on without a lot of coding. And save that. And now let's go ahead and bring this back up. And I'm going to refresh my page. And there we can see we're going to have the transition effect, the fading effect, without the drop down that's there. So that's all you need to do to set up a fading banner inside of your website. And again, you can use the one that's in my framework, or you can Google jQuery and jQuery Slider or jQuery Banner Slider, and there are lots and lots of these tools available for you. In the next video, we're going to go ahead and we're going to set up the lightbox, or the image gallery with the lightbox, on the About page. And again, if we go to our finished project here and go to the About page, here's an example of the gallery that we're going to set up. And you can see I've just got 3 simple images here. When I click on one, the full size version of the image appears. We have room for a caption here. We have a close button, as well as previous and next buttons here as well. And you can also close it just by clicking in the background area. So that's the next thing that we're going to go ahead and do in the next video, is set up that lightbox. I'll see you in the next video.